Can you be woke and can you be religious?
Scientific.
It's something that is possible.
It's not possible to follow everything that a book
So
says.
what do you know of your culture before colonialism?
Mind control techniques. Back then,
You can be both, but I can see why it's difficult to be both.
Greeks, for over 2,000 years, have been doing this thing where it's called studying the mind.
Do you ever wonder at what point in history
Yeah.
that we went from being here, being kings
Yeah.
and building civilizations and to being here,
Yeah.
which is where we are being
Yeah.
and you turn around and went technology.
Yeah. Marcus Garvey said, if you have 100 million Christians in the world, then you've got 100 million different versions of Christianity.
So welcome to Conclusion. I'm Felicia Oluti. My year is different to your year. All of this topic that we're about to do is, can you be woke and can it's something that is possible? So yeah.
So how about you two? Are you guys religious, non-religious?
I feel like because I was raised as a Catholic in in church and just Christianity as a whole, to honour my family, but it's not something that I carry with me. Like, I believe in God.
How about you two?
I'm more scientific and spiritual.
More scientific and spiritual.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think I was sad on that, yeah.
Yeah. So can you be woke and religious?
The thing is, I can see the correlation or the non-correlation between being woke and religious. I think, if you're religious, then you have very specific views that are unweighable. So you're not going to slant to one way or the other. It's just, this is what you believe. And I think being woke, it's almost like everything is a lie. It's like taking a red pill, isn't it? And you just have that eureka moment. You're like, wow, really? I can see why it would be difficult to be woke and then say you're religious at the same time. Because being religious, there are far too many ambiguous scenarios to being religious. So for instance, if you go back to the Church of England, there's that whole scenario. If you're religious and you believe in God and the peace and whatever the case is, then why so many killings? Why so many sacrifices based on religion? So I just think religion for me, it really induces quite passionate, sometimes violent thoughts because of the historic scenarios and values that have happened. So I don't know, it's difficult. For me, I feel like I'm woke. I feel like I'm, religious in the sense that I do believe in God. I would go to church. But then I choose not to look at the negative parts of religion. Or I wouldn't force it upon anyone. So call it flunking out, but I just feel like you can be both. But I can see why it's difficult to be both, if that makes sense.
And I would say that going by the example of religious, you first of all, to define religion is to mean that you follow a particular faith, you're aligned with that faith. And most of the faiths in the world concentrate mainly the three Abrahamic ones, which would be Judaism, Islam and Christianity, all come with doctrines. And they call it the canon. So if you're going to be from a religious perspective, you would have to, or you should abide by the canon that religion bestows upon you. Otherwise, then you're not really a true follower of that religious faith.
Based on whose thoughts?
Based on the religion's thoughts.
Okay, so that's fact. Is that reference as fact?
So each of those, going by the Abrahamic ones again, each of those have a holy scripture book which tells you what you should and shouldn't do.
Okay.
Those are what we call doctrine. So you have to follow that doctrine. If you go outside of doctrine, then you go outside of that religion. So there's a confined path that you're supposed to walk in order to be of that particular denomination.
Sure.
So can you be religious and can you be woke? Because ultimately, the consensus I get from you is that you can pick and choose which parts of religion you want to adhere to.
Absolutely.
To come outside.
Absolutely. But that's based on my character. So if I had a character that was a deviant or someone that was evil or whatever, then obviously I would pick and choose and justify those points. But what I'm saying is, I am moralistically good. I am polite. I am a decent human being based on my whole life. So from that perspective, I choose to only pick those parts that are relative to me within religion. But being woke, it just means that I'm aware of everything going around me. Just because I don't respond or participate in every aspect of what's going around me doesn't mean to say that I'm not woke. I'm woke, but I'm choosing just to understand that I'm woke. So you can't really, not you, but anyone can't really come at me and say X, but actually it's Y. Do you understand what I mean? Maybe that's maybe sitting on the fence slightly, but I think if you choose to delve into it too deeply, it'll be difficult to agree to disagree, because everyone's views are going to be like, X, Y, and Z. So that's, again, yeah, it's not definitive, but it's the way I've chosen to kind of take it.
Yeah.
If I'm going to believe both sides.
I agree with what you said about religions have like a specific guidebook of you got to follow all these rules, but for me, I've realised that you can't let religion control you, and it's something that's why when Felicia was like, "Are you religious?" I was like, "Well, I have faith," because I think religious is more where the whole religion controls you and you literally go by the book and follow every single thing. And personally, I don't think that's realistic or possible because nobody is perfect. So I think with religion, there's no one person that can tell me they're fully religious and they follow every single rule of the book and they do everything correct and they never sinned before. Even in the religions themselves, they tell you that nobody's perfect and everybody sins. And I think people just have this stigma on religion that it controls you and the way you think and you're not your own person and you kind of like follow everything without questioning it. So yeah, you can be woke and follow a religion as long as you kind of think for yourself and have a personal relationship with God as well.
The way I see this debate, it's kind of like a football match. You have a play for one team or you play for the other team. In an idealistic world, we'd love it that, we could all get along and be harmony. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like, if it's written in your holy book textbook to say, okay, you see a gay man kill him, then that's what you're supposed to do. That is your religion.
It doesn't say that anywhere.
If he's a homosexual, you kill him.
So this is now my question of, so with holy books, do you think that, it being 2018, that you can take things in such a literal way, especially if you're of a conscious and woke mind?
Yes.
In a literal way?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's written in that way. So if it says, thou shalt not kill, that means you can't interpret it any other way except for you should not kill.
But how about thou shalt not kill, but what if I saw a man hits me and I punch him back and that punch...
That's what it says, an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
Then what did you do?
That's killed.
Yeah.
So am I now going to be punished because I protected myself?
Well, that's what it says in your religious context.
Right.
It doesn't give you variance. The religious context don't give you variance. It's not like you read a psychological paper or social paper when it says, okay, and this is the way humans act, and then this can happen and that can happen and so forth. They just give you specific guidelines and they say, this is what it is and that's on the plate. Your deity said this and this is the way you should live your life in accordance to that. You step outside of that boundaries, you step outside of that deity, that means you're not in conclusion with what you're supposed to be worshipping. If you're outside of that box, then you're not a part of that religion.
And what I'll say on top of that is when we're looking at how the book is written and composed, it's written as a religious history book. So it's supposed to be events that have happened in history according to the religion. So these people in history were going by a set of rules by the religion that we're meant to be following today. So if that's how they behaved and responded to their instructions then, why should the response be different today if it's meant to be true?
So I guess that's a good point, and I agree with it as well. So in context, I would personally myself, I'd say as someone who says, okay, they woke and they're religious, I would ask the question, do you abide by everything that is preached within your religion? If you say no, then I personally see you as a spiritual person. Yeah. So yeah, you hold a faith, yeah, but your faith is determined by what you want to believe, yeah, and what you want to pick and choose.
Exactly.
And I give you respect. It's not a demotion or anything. I give you respect for that. Yeah, that you're not being told that you're going to do everything they tell you to do because you don't think that is right, or this is right, and so forth.
But then
So
it's not possible.
sorry.
It's not possible to follow everything. Like I said, it's physically not possible to follow everything that a book says.
So this was taken from an article that was just talking about what you were talking about, right? So she said, sin is not just talking about
It's not just simply not smoking, not drinking, not dating girls who smoke or drink. That's not sin. Sin is basically the attempt by human beings to take the place of God, and that's what. And then she then said, and that's what racism does.
Can't be dictated
Yeah.
to by a book.
Like
ultimately.
I can't tell you you're not a Christian for that.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. But there are people out there that would.
I'll give you a quote. Like Marcus Garvey said, if you have 100 million Christians in the world, then you've got 100 million different versions of Christianity. And I like that statement. That's a good statement as such. That self-proclaimed woke Christian quote that you just said, to me, it makes no sense, because she starts talking about sin and cigarettes and alcohol and stuff like that, which has no relevance to being woke or being religious. Yeah. In essence, the point I'm trying to make is that if you ask any faith, and I'm going to talk about the three that we mainly deal with, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. If you ask any of them, what is the cornerstone of your faith? And they will tell you it's the Torah, the Quran, and the Bible. If you question anything, they will say, refer to the Torah, the Quran, or the Bible. All three books are words, and allegedly written from Aramaic or Arabic as such. So if you're getting all your guidance, all your information from a book that's written 2,000 odd years ago, or such, depending anyway.
But what about Christianity in terms of the Bible? There are so many different versions of it, and for example, if you look at like Catholicism, like it was the Council of Nicaea that decided what was going to go into the Bible and what was going to get taken out. So, for example, I think the Bible, in a lot of the cases, to me, it kind of not diminishes, because that's quite a harsh word, but it really dims the role that women played, I feel, in biblical times. However, most people don't know that Mary Magdalene had her own gospel, and that got taken out. So, I don't know. When people like refer to this, refer to that, I'm just like, I can only speak for the Bible because that's what I've been exposed to. But personally, I think, yeah, alright, the Old Testament is quite like, you know, fire and brimstone, straightforward, this, that and the other. But all the new stuff, I'm just like, I don't know.
Your point is valid. And that's another point. If you're specifically talking about the Bible itself, it's got many books in there.
Yeah.
And the Council of Nicaea did say this will go in and this won't go in. And there's a lot of Gospels that I've left on the side. And I can even easily ask a Christian if they're talking about faith. I say, what about the Gospel of St. Thomas? Oh, I don't recognize that.
Yeah.
So you say, but this is meant to be a part of your faith, no? Oh, but it's not in the book that's written. So then if the book is the premises of where you get all your moral judgments and your thoughts from, and you step outside the book to have your own thoughts and opinions and not do what the book says, as far as I'm concerned, you're not what you are claiming to be. You are now evolved into something, a conscious being that is a sum of one part and a sum of yourself, of your own thoughts and opinions. Alright? Because you're not exactly doing everything that it says here. And you say it's not possible to do everything it says it. Then personally, that's why, if it's not possible, why would you even give it?
But I think in religion, it's a journey. Like, you're not just going to wake up one day, like, for example, Islam. If okay, I'm Muslim, some Muslim people might be like, no, you're not Muslim because you're not wearing a headscarf.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean, to me, I'm not a Muslim, because I am. Do you know what I mean? But it's a journey, and I think everyone is practicing how to be a better person.
No, but I think even the headscarf thing, I don't think it was like, it's not specifically a rule to say you have to wear a headscarf.
This is the thing, that's the debate as well.
It's more of a cultural thing, because it was an example of what some women did when they heard about the Prophet Muhammad and what he had done.
Yeah.
They wrapped themselves up, and it was what they did, but it wasn't like wrong to say.
It's deemed like
compulsory. Like some people say it's compulsory, and nowadays they've started to say that it's not. And I'm just like, okay, cool. So, and then they're like, oh, as long as you just cover up.
But I swear in the Bible it says, you know, a woman should cover her hair. So essentially, like I don't see a lot of Catholics or whatever type of Christians wearing, wearing scarves. So does that really matter?
In some Catholic churches in like South America and places like that, they do actually wear, and I think my nan was saying that at one point when she was younger, they did actually wear like
Yeah, you covered your hair.
like a veil, not like
Veil.
like a veil, like a very short version of like a wedding veil, but it was just put on your head.
In Nigeria, the Catholics cover their hair. This is like a pro-black article about Christianity and black people, and woke people, and it says, white Jesus hasn't done anything for us, according to pro-black non-Christian communities, as they call for an awakening amongst their fellow people. They urge that they put down the crucifix, holy oils, and because Christianity is not for the black people, as it was brought by the slave master to Africa to oppress Africans, and we should opt for our own African gods. And if you don't, unfortunately, you're not woke enough. Since we're woke, do we have to adopt our ancestors' religions?
I was a
Story.
dedicated Christian, let's say between the ages of 16 to probably 23 to 25. Well, from 23 I started to open my mind a bit more. But what's it called? What I would say with that is, going from that, when you're within that lifestyle, it's very rigid. And then you jump from that, and let's say you go to the African woke consciousness side. You're still jumping from one rigidness into another rigid setting, which is what I done for probably like a year and a half. So then I had to woke again, and then come out of that into the space I'm in now. So it's like, in terms to respond to that, are you woke enough? You're not woke, in my opinion, you're not woke enough if you're still within a rigid setting.
So what, is there different types of wokeness?
Well, yeah, there's many different levels.
Yeah. Alright, do you want to go by the different kind of
No,
levels?
it's not.
That's right. That's right.
It's not like a level was in like DEFCON 1, 2, 3. It's not like that. It's more of like your radio dial when you're flicking from 89.9 to 107 to whatever. They're going up in the scale. So you can be on different levels, and obviously everyone's coming in from a different perspective on where they are and how they want to evolve. I personally see as your own personal spiritual development outside of your religious dogma is you elevate up your frequencies and levels. So you can get to the highest tier of Christianity you can. If you're still within the bounds of that dogma saying, you're not going to get any further than that, until you want to break through and transcend to go to some next level.
Like, for me, I only know Africans who are either Muslim or Christian, yeah? And I was talking to one of my friends, and I asked him, I was just like, what do you know of your culture before colonialism? And he was just like, what do you mean? Cultural basis of the countries that we come from, do you get what I mean? Because we completely disregard it because of our religion.
Yeah.
And what were we doing before? In the Bible, isn't there a reference to what Jesus actually looks like?
There's a vague reference. The transition between Christianity and Islam or Judaism is just like living in the same house and going to your bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen. There's no differences because...
I love the reference, the analogies. They're so one of a kind.
If it was more like you said, they're leaving Christianity and they're going to Buddhism, then you could have that kind of argument. For me personally, you could have that kind of argument to say the differences between the two. But because the three are all based on the same principles and are all based on the Torah, it's simple enough to just like, okay, I'll just go over here. Maybe this one's better because
do you view them like, they're all the same?
They are.
It's
like a tree.
Similar. They're not the same.
They're a tree. A tree grows and it has 3 branches. It's one tree.
They're not the same. They're similar.
It just has 3 branches. No.
They're not the same.
Okay, sorry.
There's a lot of differences.
They have their own cultural story.
When I said the same, I was a word I should have used it. You're right. They are similar.
Yeah, that's right.
But they all originate.
Apologise.
They all originate from the Torah. Yeah, we'll be in the Torah first, Christianity second, and the Quran third, or Islam third. Yeah. In that kind of respect, that's the way I see it.
I think there's an element of truth in that.
Can I just say one thing about the Black God thing? So I was my dad's Rastafarian, my mom's Christian, so I went to church and I went to the Rasta church, and I went to a Catholic school as well. So I've seen, like, then Rastafarian is based on Christianity. So I've seen it from a black perspective, Christianity from an extreme black perspective, and I've seen my mum was a Methodist, and I've seen Christianity from a place of a European perspective, and I've been to the Catholic Church, and I've seen it from the Catholic perspective as well. And then I was like, okay, you know what? Let me read outside the box. So I started reading Greek mythology, and that was the old Greek gods, and I moved on to Egyptian mythology. Egyptian religion, so I was reading about the gods of creation and so forth, and I was like, this all sounds interesting. And then I moved from that, and I moved up on Orisha, which is a European native religion, which is basically Christianity, except for a black version. This is why a lot of European people migrate into Christianity, because the original religion they had, Orisha, was about one god who ruled over them all, and he had subjects, or you could call them angels or deities or whatever. One of them rebelled, they tried to take the throne, and then the god came back and he was like, no, blah, 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 and it was all of this stuff, which was very, very similar to Christianity.
That's really interesting, I didn't know that.
The Yoruba people themselves, which stretches like all over West Africa to East Africa, to Uganda. There's Yoruba people in Uganda as well. Those hundreds of millions of people were able to migrate into Christianity very, very easily.
Okay.
Do you think that's why it was so easy to convince them?
Yeah, it was simple. It was. The story of the original Yoruba stories were very similar to how Christianity was. And my thesis on why Egypt became the way it was is because it was an amalgamation of different customs and religious beliefs all coming into one region. All merging to then form one belief, and then that multiple god tier system into a monolithic god tier system, which was the first one in the world. And then out of that spawned the rest of all these other religions that came out of nowhere. But for me, does that mean because I've left the others that I should just run to as they call it in the Egyptians, Chemetics, kind of the terms, Neshumeda or whatever? Do I have to run and go into that and say, okay, I'm devout, going to be this way? No, because I don't think that has relative bearings in my life today. It was an outdated religion back then. That's why it didn't succeed through. So what is it going to do? What benefit does it have to me now? However, stories, customs, and cultures that brought down to existence or still present in Africa today, they have relevance.
Right, Hinz.
Going back to the question, I think if we're going by the definition of woke that you specifically said, I think anything that limits or controls the way you think and act is means you're not woke, or you can't fully be woke. So I think it all depends on what your definition of woke is, first of all, and then it goes back to if your religion is controlling and limiting and dictating your whole life and how you live your life and how you think. So like I said, again, it goes back to that whole how you want to look at it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. There's no, you can be woke and you can be religious, or you can't be this and you can be that. It all depends on how you choose to see things and how you choose to live your life.
On an individual level,
Mm-hmm.
and on a religious institutional level, it's not relevant. And I agree with him as well. I agree with you in that statement. It's an easy thing to get into because it gives you structure and so forth. However, in 2018, you'll be surprised to know that Islam is like declining in the West. Although the people coming from Islamic countries to this country, they are not the same. They won't go back to the Islamic countries to live under that regime and that way of life. They don't want to live under Sharia law. They prefer the democratic societies. But in essence, the black gods, I tell you the number one black god is, the most famous one of all of them, is Anansi.
Oh, yes,
Anansi.
Who's Anansi?
Anansi is the trickster god, and he has developed from being a religious figure into a more cultural symbolism. So, for example, mainly based in Ghana and Ashanti, Anansi is seen as a sky god, yeah, or as a man, or as a half man, half god.
Yeah.
And there's stories about it. They tell the children. From that, those stories have been transferred to the Caribbean. So Jamaica, Trinidad, places they have Anansi stories, and even in America they have Anansi stories as well. To the fact that even Marvel created an Anansi character.
Who's that?
There's a Marvel character called Anansi.
And also,
Yeah.
there's this program called American Gods as well.
Yeah.
And
Still never got into that.
yeah, it's a bit.
It takes a while to get into. Really.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're just like, oh my hand.
Also, it was
Interesting.
written in reference that Nancy, the concept of a Nancy, helped the rebellious slaves in the Caribbean
Yeah.
to oppress the Muslims. Because a Nancy, the nature of a Nancy, he's a trickster. He's so smart, but he's a trickster as well, so he gets away with stuff. Yeah. So what he used to do, his number one tactic he used is play play dumb to catch smart. So what he would do is like, do you know what this is? No, I don't know what it is. But he knows where it is. Yeah. But he was he knows where he is. He knows what he's doing. But he would play dumb to catch smart and then get
Play
what
fool
he
to
wants.
catch wise.
Yeah, but we'll play fool to catch wise.
So is he a form of? So is he a god of Obia? So is that?
It's not. No.
No,
Obi is
he's
not the
a
correct term that he used. Obi is just to describe black magic.
But then
He's an African. It depends on how you revere him, but he's an African deity. Yeah, so he's seen as a god. Yeah, but he's also seen sometimes he's depicted in some stories as a half god, and sometimes he's depicted as a human as well. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is the concept of what he is. Yeah, whether he's because even if he's seen as a sky god, he does interactions with other gods. Yeah, and other gods might be more powerful, more wise than he is. So he still plays tricks on them to get what he wants and to get and so he can have the reward at the end. So that concept he's migrating over to the Caribbean. So when the slaves were being oppressed, when the master used to try and ask them complex or questions, they was like, I don't know the answer, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir. So now, because the Europeans have that instant that thing that we're superior, you're stupid. They played onto that.
Yeah.
That kind of mentality. And like, no, sir. Yes, sir. But they knew where everything was.
Yeah.
And they know we had the knife, them sharpen up. They're gonna cut him with knife. Yeah. Do you know where all the metal's gone, sir? I mean, I don't know. What is metal? Come on there, sir. This there. The shoe have the hoof. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he was like, oh, sir, but just simple man. And so they use that concept of what they learned from the Nancy stories that their parents used to teach them.
Yeah.
Use it on the white people so they could.
So these black gods that you speak of, what religion do they come under? Or
In Africa, it's not so much you can say they just fall under a specific religion.
I think it's more cultural.
Every nation, why do they call tribe? Every nation has a variation or maybe the same kind of deity. So Shango is the god of thunder god, right? And someone is a sky god, and some is just.
Okay,
a
yeah, but sorry, but isn't that then because Sango? So Songo, Songo.
Depends on
He that's all part of Juju. That's when you say, oh, that's all Juju.
That's the
But-
branding.
but
That's the
is
branding the
that- is
Europeans are
that-
giving you.
Yeah, exactly. Is that the Christian view?
No, but
of
isn't that
what-
the
That is the Christian view. So
Yeah.
example, that's just like you saying, talking about Zeus and stuff, and I say, oh, you brought up Zeus. That's black magic.
Yeah. So
yeah, but
what-
then isn't that then classic? Because Zeus, isn't that all just Greek mythology?
No, that is
you
a
know.
Greek religion.
Yeah.
It's that-
So
it's a died
would
out
you then
Greek
just
religion.
classify that as Greek religion? But then what you're talking about isn't the term that they would use for that Juju.
No, the white people are very crafty with language and terminology and stuff. You didn't devise any of this. You didn't put any of that into characters. This is why when people say look at Haiti and they go, oh, Haiti, they just do black magic
Yeah,
and
they do
Obia.
Obia, they do.
Yeah.
But
But-
at what point did we decide?
We never
that,
decided
But
that.
we never decided that was Obia.
No.
That was what we believed in.
That
That is how
is
powerful
what
we
the
were.
Europeans gave it and said that. But did you know that Haiti itself as a country is independent and older than America is as a
Yeah.
country? Haiti is over 200 years old. When you're over there celebrating 60 years independence dancing and shubs, Haiti is already 200 plus. And
Yeah, plus
that's
years deep.
and we look at them as the black woman and say, look, they do Obia, that's
Yeah,
the bad,
they
and
do
blah blah blah.
this.
But it wasn't that. It was their religious faith that binded them together so they could overcome their oppressors and chuck them out the country.
Yeah.
And there was a time when America was thinking that Haiti was going to invade them. So that's why Haiti is in the situation it is in now, because everyone wants to keep them repressed.
Yeah.
But it shows a country that's, when they've got a religious platform that unites them, they can have their freedom.
But that's why I said, I asked my friend, I was just like, what do you know about your history of your country and your people before colonialism? And it was very much like, oh, I don't know. And it was just like, you know, when, like, for example, I was watching this program Siren, and it's about like mermaids and stuff like that, and then I randomly got into that, and I researched, and in many different cultures, especially within Africa, there's talks of mermaids, yeah?
Okay.
But it's
Mummy
what
Wakas.
Mami Wata, right? But, like, for example, I was talking to another one of my friends yesterday, and I was mentioning that, and he was just like, oh yeah, but it's just like, you know, fairy tales. I was just like, listen, there are some tribes in Africa, or some countries or places where if you mention that, they're like, don't, it's not a joke. Like, this is very real. And I'm just like, okay, so how do we differentiate that? Because there are people who live in like Nigeria or Ghana or Zimbabwe or whatever who are Christian, but on that cultural aspect of Mami Wata or whatever, they're like, I believe in that, don't play around. So how can you believe in both?
Yeah,
If you're that tied into it, if you're that tied into Christianity, how can something that trivial and that, oh, that's Obia, that's because you know it's real and there is an element of truth in it.
Yeah, but it's not Obia. Obia will be like something like Orisha, which is the worship of deities. Yeah. So they would have that, and you'll have your black priest who should be the leader of the community or that place. Those people were so devout to that religion because it's a part of them, yeah, that they would literally die to be free or die to get their freedom.
Yeah.
The Europeans didn't like this, yeah. So the Europeans like, how do we subjugate them even further? We will get religion, we'll give them Christianity. First churches that came were the Ethiopian Christian churches, yeah. And then what happens? They tried to preach to the black people and get them to do their own churches or whatever. And then they were like, hold on, no, we got to change this because it's too African related. Then they became Baptist churches, yeah. So they had a spread of Baptist churches across the Americas and in the Caribbean. But what the white people used to do is they put an overseer in the church. So they don't want that black guy to be preaching what he wanted to preach in. He's going to preach on what the white man wants to preach on. So every Sunday or every congregation in the church, you see the master there and maybe his wife or whatever, hearing the ceremony and so forth. Everyone's in the church. So no one can have a ceremony without a white person being present.
Yeah.
That way you pacified the energy and you pacified the movement. And that as well, they made sure that the people were informed and who's doing what. So who's practicing and having secret meetings with this, what we call black magic people. Who's that? I'm going to kill them. And we'll find out, we'll root out who the leader is, the spiritual leader, we'll kill him, kill his children, and so forth. And that way you just kill the movement. And then we make it all, we'll label it black magic.
You know, I truly believe that side of our power culturally was stripped away from us because they knew how powerful we are when we have that inside of us.
Rebellions will happen all the time.
Like, I genuinely believe that was the basis of, like, because do you ever wonder at what point in history did the tables just flip like that and we went from being here to here?
Oh, that's simple. That's simple. That is technology. Oh, no, sorry, can we just give us 2 minutes?
Oh, sorry. What happened
That's
here?
what happened.
Why is technology not right?
I said, at
think
what
we're in
point,
two different places.
we're in 2 different places.
places.
I said, do you ever wonder at what point in history that we went from being here, being kings and building pyramids and civilizations and to being here, which is where we are being suppressed and slavery. And you turned around and went technology.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Right, so I'll explain it simply. Yeah? So
don't name and terms. I want to hear all the hard words.
okay. Let's look at it on a map scale. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you got the map,
Simplified. You gonna done it again.
Portugal. No, that's it.
Why is he like?
You done did it again.
I'll explain this.
Okay.
So you're on the map, you've got Portugal, and on the other side of the continent, you've got China. Sorry, darling. Our people, as such, are obviously in the thousands of years we spawned down, we populated the rest of the world, and they all changed and mutated into new peoples and stuff. But our people generally just live in our own regions. If we have fights or troubles, we're amongst ourselves. But we keep to our customs, and we've really just kept that way in life. Yeah. The Europeans and the East and Central Asians have a state of perpetual war, yeah? Perpetual war. So you have Europeans fighting each other, you got the rise of the Roman Empire, you got the Spartans, you had the Greeks, you had the Ottomans, you had the Byzantine empires, You've had the Chinese Golden Horde Mongol invasions. That's when Genghis Khan tried to take over Europe. You also had the Indian expansion as well, Persian Empire and so forth. Mm-hmm. They are always continually at perpetual war. When you're at war, you always look for the advantage when next time you go into battle. So the evolution of weaponry has gone from fighting someone with clubs and sticks to stone spears, to changing it from copper to steel, from bronze to steel.
Okay.
You go through that. You get shields, metal shields, you ride horses, you have chariots. No, you asked the question, you want the long story.
Okay. Yeah? So I said I wanted the big word.
Yeah. So what it is you got the advancement of warfare. Listen, you have the advancement of warfare. Yeah? That you get to a state where it's like you're commanding legions of 1 million people and leading them into war. And you don't have no computer systems, no nothing to that. And you say, these guys over here, that guys over here, we flank them on this side, we do this and stuff. When you watch those war films, if you've seen them in the old days. Right, Chinese then invented gunpowder. Yeah? Where else some of that? What you have cannons. Yeah? And then war took from land to sea. You had sea wars. So then what happens now? When you go to a country, Africa was like Japan, it's cut off from ice here. When you got someone turn up and your ship turns up in a big ship, big wooden ship that anything you've ever seen before in your life, and they're blasting you with cannons from the water, and then they get out and they come with swords and crossbows that you only have bow and arrows, but they have crossbows that can shoot through metal and then stab and juke you up. You've lost the war because you're not technically advanced as they are. So they just take over, and then look at that, they have muskets and guns. So you got your bow and arrows and they got broomsticks.
Wow!
One other aspect of this is another aspect, it's the greatest part of it. Besides the war, Greeks for over 2,000 years have been doing this thing where it's called studying the mind. Yeah, philosophy, anthropology, whatever. All they've been doing is mind work, measuring your brain, how you think, what drives you to go, and blah blah blah. They studied it down to a T that they was able to use mind control techniques back then, or to influence people.
Yeah, they used to use people's own war effort towards them, so they would. I know a couple of things too, boo.
That's good.
So I said, and I quote, how did we get from here, being kings and queens, building whole country civilization to being here to being suppressed?
Yeah.
Now, I'm very well aware of the advancements of technology during that time. Okay. However, you are actually forgetting the fact that we travelled.
Yeah, of course.
We had ships, we had boats.
We didn't have big fleets.
The Moors. We were travelling, we were literally war leaders, we were this, we were that, influencing.
There was no specific point in time. It all comes over a period of time. So for the times that we was going to Europe and we were sailing in our small boats going to Europe to influence the kings of Europe and the queens of Europe and be Moors and stuff like that, that's great. And we told them how to set up systems, they took that, and because they're in perpetual war, they developed our systems on top of that systems and improved themselves, right? But at home, we wasn't in those states of conflicts that they was in. So we was cool, calm and collected. Then what happened is when they think, these Africans are gold and they keep coming here and they're just making money and stuff. So who's ever seen their country? No one's ever been there. 2 twos before you know, a big ship turns up, with 300 men on it. But not just one, and not just two, Hundreds of these ships on it.
But Spain had to come correctly when they were visited.
Why? They didn't come correctly with the Aztecs. Cortez slaughtered them all. They didn't come correctly with the Indians, they slaughtered them. And they didn't come correctly with the Chinese, they slaughtered them as well. And they slaughtered the Africans because they had the technology to do it. If they didn't have the technology and came by land, they would all died. Malaria would have killed them a long time ago, and then they wouldn't be able to find the bush. It's too hot for them. They can't eat the food. That's why they never conquer Congo. They can never get into the hot Congo and conquer it because it was get me out of here, James. Congo was too much. It was too big. It was too tropical, it was too hot, there's too many things trying to kill them, there was the snake, and then they're in the bush, they're a ghost tribe, they tried to they couldn't do it, so that's why they left Congo, the only country they didn't conquer was Ethiopia because it's always had a relationship with the outside world, the kingdom there, but the rest of them, they were just we can take it all. They took South Africa easily, and look how long they kept until Shaka Zulu said, I have enough of all of this. Yeah, and he pushed back. With spears, but a lot of them died. Yeah,
James, get me out.
Yeah, it was they took Congo, East Africa, and they took the West. And it's not just white people did it. The East Africans did it on the East African coast as well. The East African slave trade is older than the West. East African coast as well.